Roast beef is another one of those classics that is dead easy to do, but there are a couple of things that one needs to bear in mind. First of all, we all know how expensive meat is, and you want the minimum shrinkage in that piece of beef that you're going to cook. Now, the way to achieve that is to use a roasting pan with a trivet, and then at the bottom of the pan, you pour in roughly about 2 cups of boiling water. And just put that into the oven so that this remains nice and hot. So we put the pan in the oven, but the trivet we're keeping open. The beef, never ever in a million years cook roast beef cold from the fridge. It needs to come to room temperature. Now, this has been standing out for a while, and another really, really good idea is please do not believe the old fallacy that you mustn't salt your meat before the time. What actually happens, if you season your meat, it will initially draw a little bit of liquid out of the meat. But after a while, through natural osmosis, that liquid that is being drawn out will be drawn back in again to balance the juice content of the meat. And then the flavor penetrates right into the meat. So what I'm doing here is this is a beautiful piece of sirloin that the butcher prepared for me. This was a kilo of rolled sirloin. You can see they've boned it and they've tied the meat with string to keep it. And this piece of meat is the same thickness throughout, which makes it very easy for you to gauge the cooking of the meat. Be generous with the seasoning. And this garlic pepper is the most superb seasoning to use on the beef. You want almost a seasoning crust to form on here. Another huge advantage of the sirloin is the fact that you've got a piece of fat on top. So as the meat cooks, that fat is going to be a natural basting on there. Now, we put the seasoning on, but we also need to give it a little bit of oil. Oil sparks the flavor of the seasoning, and it will certainly help to keep the meat nice and moist. Now, this meat should now stand for about 45 minutes to an hour to allow the juices to be drawn out a little bit and then to be reabsorbed on the meat. And stand it on a plate and you just cover it with a piece of greaseproof paper or whatever you have. Now, the next thing you must do when you're doing roast beef is, this is an expensive piece of meat. And the difference between rare, medium, and overcooked is like between 5 and 10 minutes. But it's impossible to calculate it because it depends on the outside temperature, the temperature of the meat, the altitude where you live, 1,000 things. So the way to make sure that you scientifically get a perfect result every time is to invest in a meat thermometer. Now, the only part of the meat thermometer that is heat sensitive is that little tip. So when you insert the meat thermometer into the meat, insert it in such a way that the tip is exactly in the middle of the meat, and don't push it so far that it goes right at the bottom, because then it reads the temperature of the pan. I'm going to insert the meat thermometer. Just make sure the fat side is uppermost and insert the meat thermometer so that the tip is exactly in the center of the piece of meat. Now this little baby goes onto the trivet. because you also don't want it to stand on a hot pan in the oven, because then it hardens the bottom piece of meat. So now this will be suspended over a beautiful water bath, which will keep the moisture in, but the direct heat of the oven will give you the browning. Now lastly, the other thing that's quite important is the temperature of the oven. You blast that piece of meat with high heat. It's about 230 to 250 degrees Celsius. And then after 15 minutes, you turn the temperature down to 180. Now you will calculate your time more or less like this. 15 minutes for the blast cook right in the beginning. And then after that, you calculate between 15 and 20 minutes per kilo. Now this is just over a kilo. So theoretically speaking, we should cook this for 15 minutes plus about another 20 minutes. But we don't have to guess. We can look at the thermometer. Right. Now, here we've got a lovely piece of beef that we cooked yesterday. And if you know, honestly, roast beef thinly sliced when it's cold is one of the most economical things you can serve. You will get 2 platters like this with with the meat all fanned out, and we'll show you the slicing just now. And it's actually far better to take the meat to your delicatessen or your supermarket and ask them to slice it for you professionally, and that's what we're going to do this morning. So here's our piece of cooked beef. Can you see how beautifully brown it is on the outside? And we took it out just before it was rare. And then when it comes out, you wrap it straight away in foil, and it'll carry on cooking until you should just have rare roast beef in the middle. And of course the advantage of this fantastic method is that you have the juiciest, tenderest, best roast beef. You know, there's an old saying that says, God made the food and the devil made the cooks. So often, good food is spoilt by unsympathetic and insensitive cooking methods. And together with this roast beef, once it's sliced, we're going to serve some of our mustard sauce. Beef and mustard is a natural marriage. Hello, here we are in this lovely Alphen Spa. And John, who's a qualified chef, is going to do the honors today and slice the meat for us the way it should be sliced, paper thin. Thanks, John.
Sure.